Hey guys, hope you're all doing great, and this week we're going to be continuing with our economics series for all you economists out there taking economics classes or wanting to learn a little bit more. This week's topic is going to be on elasticity, all kinds of elasticity, demand elasticity, cross-price elasticity, all the ones you can think of. We're going to cover it, so I hope you can learn something here and apply it, and I'll see you all next week. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're having a good weekend. And this week we're diving back into some economics, and we're going to be discussing elasticity. So there are a few different types of elasticity in economics that are discussed, but the most common is the demand elasticity, or price elasticity of demand, as it's commonly referred to. In general terms, elasticity measures the percentage change of an economic variable in response to a change in another independent variable. Demand elasticity, as we know it from basic economics courses, is simply the change in demand that results from a change in the price level. So we can take a look at an example here. So if the price elasticity of demand is -5, this means that for a 1% change in price, demand falls by 5%, the quantity demanded. It's also very important for many topics in economics is this concept, especially for social welfare such as consumer and producer surplus, and the extent of deadweight loss, which we'll cover in a future video as well. Other types of elasticity include elasticity of supply, income elasticity, and cross-price or substitution elasticity, among others that are more advanced. Elasticity utilizes differential calculus in that it measures the percentage change of one variable in response to the percentage change in another variable, or the rate of change, that has a causal effect on the other. This is often calculated in the first year economics using the Midport Formula. So in this lecture, price elasticity will be the main focus, mainly because it's often used in economics. It's used a lot. So it has a close tie with the trade-off of the y-axis and the x-axis variables, which means it has a close relation to the slope of the demand or supply curve. So the steeper the curve here, the smaller the price elasticity of demand or supply is, and the flatter the curve, the larger the price elasticity becomes. This indicates that there is more drastic change in the x-axis variable when the y-axis variable is changed by a certain percentage. So the flatter that is, that happens. So let's take a look at this. Here we can see a fairly steep demand curve, and here I've labeled the initial price and quantity, and we see that 1% change, which results in a less than 1% change in the quantity demanded. So that happens when we have a steep demand curve. Now we can also have a flatter demand curve as well. And in this case, we have that same initial price and quantity, but for that same 1% change, we see a much larger than 1% change in the quantity demanded. There's also instances where price elasticity is either 0 or infinity, and we'll show you these cases now. So elasticity of 0 means that the curve is perfectly vertical, and this is called perfect inelasticity. So if the price increases by 1%, there's no change in the percent change in quantity. And for infinity, it is horizontal, and there is an infinite change in quantity, percentage change, if price increases by 1%. So this measure is very useful empirically, and the main reason this is the case is because it doesn't have any units. So it's a no units measurement, and various elasticity measures have different ranges but mean different things. So in absolute terms, so -1 and +1 is the same in the price elasticity measure, but with cross price elasticity, this is not quite the case. Let's take a closer look at price elasticity first. So if it's greater than 1, this means that the dependent variable is elastic. So if price increases by 1%, quantity falls by more than 1%, so there's a larger change here. And if it's equal to 1 exactly, it's unit elastic, meaning it has exact proportions in terms of changes. So if price increases by 1%, quantity falls by 1%. So it's the same change. And finally, if it's less than 1, it means it's inelastic, meaning little change when the dependent variable is altered here. So if price increases by 1%, quantity falls by less than 1%. So there's a smaller change. So the Midport Formula can help us to calculate elasticity using points on a graph, and it's as follows. So the price elasticity is going to be equal to Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 divided by P2 minus P1 over P1. And this is the percentage change of both quantity and price as a denominator. So income elasticity measures the responsiveness of a change in income to the quantity demanded of a certain good or service. A value greater than 1 indicates that the good is a normal or luxury good. So as income rises, you want to consume more of that good or service. And an income elasticity less than 1 indicates that a rise in income reduces demand for a certain good or service, i.e. the good is an inferior good which is less desired as income rises. So some examples of normal goods and inferior goods are as follows. So jewelry, vacations, luxury cars are examples of normal goods, and instant noodles and store brand items are inferior goods. An elasticity previously discussed is cross price elasticity, and we looked at this in the substitute and complements lecture. It's the responsiveness of demand for one good when the price of the other good changes, and we talked about this before. A positive value or elasticity indicates substitutability, and a negative elasticity indicates that the goods are complementary. So here again, positive elasticity states that a good is a substitute. So if the price of hot dogs increases, the quantity of hamburgers increases, so demand increases for the substitute. And a negative elasticity means that they are complements. And in this case, if price increases of shoes, quantity of shoelaces consumed falls because they are complements. Elasticity is commonly used to determine optimal production levels as well, through the use of finding consumer responsiveness to certain price changes in the supply chain. It can also measure how consumers value related goods through the cross-price elasticity, or how demand changes when income levels of consumers changes, or using the income elasticity. And most importantly, elasticity relies on market power, and this is what we talked about in the monopoly lesson. So monopolies by nature create very inelastic demands, and this is by construction. So for example, a city has one gas station, prices are hiked, people will still pay the price to get gas because it's the only place. So monopolies exhibit large amounts of market power, and therefore it creates an inelastic demand curve. And on the other end of the stick, we see perfect competition, which we haven't covered yet, but we will, and goods that are not necessities, and these are both very elastic demand curves. So for example, if a city has 75 McDonald's locations, if one has bad service, we simply switch to the next one, which means very elastic. If you're buying not necessary goods, such as jewelry, for example, demand is also very elastic. So if money becomes tight and your income falls, move to buying necessities instead.